There's a moment in life when everything you once believed starts to feel unfamiliar. The noise doesn't excite you anymore. The approval doesn't satisfy you. Even the goals you once chased begin to lose their shine. And it's confusing because nothing is technically wrong, yet everything feels different. You're not broken. You're not lost. You're not falling behind. Something inside you has gone quiet, but powerful. And if you've been feeling this shift lately, this video is going to explain what's really happening beneath the surface. Stay until the end. Subscribe and like. Your awakening deserves clarity today. You feel it before you understand it. Something about the way you've been living no longer sits right in your chest. The routine still exists. The responsibilities are still there. The same people still call your name. But inside, there's tension. A quiet resistance, like you're wearing a version of yourself that no longer fits your skin. The roles you once carried with pride now feel heavy. The strong one, the achiever, the dependable one, the one who always keeps it together. For years, that identity protected you. It earned you validation. It gave you control. It helped you survive environments that demanded performance instead of presence. But now, it feels fake, not because it was a lie, but because it was incomplete. You notice how exhausting it is to keep proving yourself, how draining it feels to constantly manage how others see you. The approval that once fueled you barely touches you anymore. The goals you chase so aggressively now feel strangely hollow. And that scares you, because if you're not that driven, controlled, admired version of yourself, then who are you? It feels like you're losing yourself. But look deeper. You're not losing yourself. You're losing the mask that helped you survive. There's a difference. This discomfort, this identity crisis, this internal shaking, it isn't collapse. It's shedding. The ego structure that once held your world together is loosening its grip. And when that grip weakens, it feels terrifying. You feel exposed, uncertain, smaller, almost, like the ground beneath you isn't stable anymore. But what's really happening is expansion. The old version of you was built around fear. Fear of not being enough, not being chosen, not being respected. So you constructed an identity that could never be questioned. You became impressive, reliable, strong. Now your soul wants something deeper than survival. And that deeper part of you can't breathe inside the old structure. That's why everything feels tight. That's why conversations feel shallow. That's why pretending feels unbearable. You're not regressing. You're outgrowing. The Sophia stage begins here, in this uncomfortable in-between, where who you were can no longer contain who you're becoming, where the identity that once saved you starts cracking under the weight of your own evolution. Let it crack. Because on the other side of that fracture isn't emptiness. It's truth. And truth doesn't need to perform to be powerful. It didn't end with fireworks. It ended with silence. After the arguments, after the breakdown, after the nights where your thoughts wouldn't let you sleep, there was no dramatic breakthrough. Just a quiet room, a steady breath, and a version of you sitting there, almost unfamiliar, staring at the aftermath of everything you've been through. Before this silence, there was chaos, emotional storms that tore through your confidence, questions that attacked your identity, moments where you felt isolated even in a crowded room. You doubted your decisions. You replayed conversations. You felt anger, regret, grief, sometimes all in the same hour. It was loud inside you, restless, unforgiving. And then something shifted. Not outside, inside. The reactions that used to come instantly started slowing down. The urge to defend yourself softened. The need to explain, to prove, to fight back, it wasn't as sharp anymore. At first, you thought you were just tired, drained from the emotional war. But this isn't exhaustion. It's awareness. You're observing your thoughts now instead of drowning in them. You're noticing your triggers without becoming them. The same situations that once would have pulled you into drama now pass through you differently. There's space between the event and your response. And in that space, there's something steady. This quiet feels unfamiliar because you've been used to noise, used to intensity, used to chaos feeling like passion and reaction feeling like strength. Now the calm almost feels suspicious. You wonder if you become numb. But you haven't. You become grounded. The breakdown didn't destroy you. It stripped you. It exposed the patterns you were unconsciously repeating. It forced you to sit with parts of yourself you used to avoid. And in that confrontation, something rearranged itself internally. Wisdom doesn't arrive during the storm. It forms after it, in the stillness, in the reflection, in the moments when you finally stop fighting reality and start understanding it. You're not reacting the way you used to because you're not the same person who entered the storm. The chaos carved depth into you. It taught you where your ego was fragile. It showed you what truly matters and what was just noise. Now you're watching life instead of wrestling it. If this part resonates, comment, "I feel the shift" below. I want to know who's experiencing this. Because this silence you're feeling isn't emptiness. It's construction. Something profound is forming inside you, and it doesn't need to scream to prove its power. There was a time when their approval felt like oxygen. A compliment could lift your entire week. A cold response could ruin your night. You measured yourself through reactions, through praise, through attention, through how well you were received. You adjusted your tone, your opinions, even your dreams just to stay accepted. You told yourself it was ambition, that it was maturity, that it was just how the world works. But deep down, you were performing. Every achievement carried a hidden question. Is this enough now? Every decision carried a fear. Will they still approve? And slowly, without you noticing, your identity became a reflection of other people's expectations. You weren't choosing from truth. You were choosing from validation. Then something began to change. The applause didn't hit the same. The recognition felt temporary. Even when people admired you, a strange emptiness lingered. You started to see how exhausting it was to constantly manage perception, how draining it felt to explain yourself over and over just to be understood. And for the first time, you stopped trying so hard. Not in rebellion, not in arrogance, but in quiet detachment. You realize not everyone is meant to understand you. Not everyone has a capacity to see your evolution. And chasing their approval was keeping you small. So you pulled your energy back. You stopped over-explaining. You stopped defending every choice. You stopped reshaping yourself to fit rooms that never felt aligned in the first place. It felt uncomfortable at first, almost selfish. You wondered if you were becoming cold. But look closely, you're not disconnecting from people. You're disconnecting from dependency. Approval is no longer your foundation. You've started building from within. There's a subtle strength in that shift, a grounded feeling that doesn't fluctuate based on who claps and who criticizes. You still care. You still listen. But you're no longer controlled by the need to be seen in a certain way. The hunger for recognition fades when self-trust grows. And that's what's happening to you. You trust your judgment more. You move without announcing every step. You choose what feels aligned, even if it confuses others. You don't need constant reassurance because something inside you is stabilized. This is not ego. This is integration. You're no longer building your identity from the outside world. You're building it from awareness. And awareness doesn't beg for permission to exist. The need to prove dissolves when you finally know who you are. And when you reach that point, applause becomes optional, because your worth no longer depends on being understood. If you started trusting yourself in ways you never did before, comment inner voice below. For most of your life, fear had the loudest voice in the room. It spoke fast. It spoke urgently. It told you what could go wrong before you even took a step. And you listened. You calculated every move. You replayed every possible outcome. You tried to think your way into safety. Overthinking felt responsible. Doubt felt intelligent. Hesitation felt mature. But it was exhausting. Every decision became a battlefield. Every opportunity came with 1,000 internal objections. You weren't choosing from desire. You were choosing from avoidance. Avoiding rejection. Avoiding failure. Avoiding judgment. Fear disguised itself as logic, and you called it wisdom. Then something shifted. After confronting your shadow, after sitting with the parts of yourself you used to deny, the noise started thinning out. Not all at once. Slowly, subtly, the panic that used to rise instantly began to pause. The catastrophic scenarios lost their intensity. And in that space, you notice something new. A quieter voice. It doesn't rush you. It doesn't pressure you. It doesn't need to prove anything. It simply knows. It feels steady in your chest. Grounded. Clear. Sometimes it doesn't even explain itself fully. It just gives you a sense of direction that feels aligned. At first, you doubted it. You wondered if it was just another emotion pretending to be truth. But the more you listened, the more consistent it became. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't spike your adrenaline. It calmed you. That's how you knew it was different. This isn't blind optimism. It's not reckless confidence. It's clarity earned through confrontation. When you face your insecurities instead of running from them, fear loses authority. It no longer controls the narrative. And when fear steps back, intuition steps forward. Sophia energy doesn't scream over your anxiety. It waits for you to quiet down enough to hear it. And now you are. You're making choices that feel right even when they don't make sense to everyone else. You're walking away from situations your old self would have clung to. You're stepping toward things that feel aligned, even if they're uncertain. The chaos that once dictated your life is no longer in charge. Because you've realized something powerful. Fear shouts to protect the ego, but intuition speaks to protect your growth. If you started trusting yourself in ways you never did before, comment inner voice below. The more you listen to that quiet certainty, the less power fear has over you. And that's when your life stops being a reaction and start becoming a conscious choice. You notice it in the smallest moments. Someone says something sharp and you don't erupt. A situation turns tense and you don't scramble to defend yourself. Criticism comes your way, and instead of collapsing internally, you pause. You breathe. You assess. And part of you almost doesn't recognize this version of yourself. Because there was a time when everything felt personal. When conflict felt like a threat to your identity. When one harsh word could send you spiraling into self-doubt or silent rage. You used to react quickly, protectively. You either fought back or shut down. There was no space in between. But that was before you faced yourself. Before you sat alone with your patterns. Before you admitted the insecurities you were hiding behind strength. Before you allowed yourself to feel the grief you kept postponing. Life didn't suddenly become gentle with you. If anything, it forced you into uncomfortable confrontations. Relationships exposed your wounds. Failures revealed your blind spots. Loss stripped away illusions. It hurt, not the dramatic kind of pain that gets attention. The quiet kind. The kind you carry privately. The kind that makes you question who you are when no one is watching. And instead of numbing it, you stayed. You examined your triggers. You traced your anger back to fear. You recognized how often your reactions were defense mechanisms protecting unhealed parts of you. That process wasn't glamorous. It didn't make you feel powerful. It made you feel exposed. But it made you honest. And honesty changes you. Now, when tension rises, you don't immediately see an enemy. You see a mirror. When criticism appears, you don't crumble. You evaluate. You take what's useful and release what projection. When someone tries to pull you into unnecessary conflict, you don't chase it for validation. You realize that not every battle deserves your energy. This isn't indifference. It's depth. You understand pain now, not just intellectually, but intimately. You know what it feels like to wrestle your own darkness, to confront jealousy, pride, fear, shame. And because you've met those parts within yourself, You're less shocked when you see them in others. Suffering, when processed consciously, becomes structure. It builds emotional muscle. It teaches you restraint without repression. It teaches you strength without aggression. The Sophia stage is not about appearing wise. It's about being shaped by what you survived. Your calm is not weakness. It's a result of battles you fought internally and won without applause. You don't react the same way anymore because you are no longer the same person who once needed to. And that quiet stability inside you, it was forged in the dark. You feel it first in the quiet moments. The world still moves around you with the same intensity, the same chaos, the same expectations. People still argue, complain, demand, and demand again. And for a long time, you used to match it, matching the tension, the worry, the drama, as if being swept along meant belonging. But now, something inside you has shifted. You notice that the same conversations that once drained you now pass by without pulling you under. You still care. You still love. But the compulsive need to fix everything, to rescue, to explain, to be caught in the storm, that urge has softened. You observe without losing yourself. You engage without entangling. You speak without losing your center. It can feel lonely at first, not because no one understands, but because your inner world has expanded beyond surface exchanges. The person you were yesterday would have felt incomplete here. You would have measured yourself in the noise of others, exhausted yourself in the expectations of 1,000 small dramas. And now, you recognize how much of that was habit, how much of it was fear masquerading as care. This is not emotional coldness. This is clarity. You are learning that you can hold space for others without surrendering your own. You can love without losing yourself. You can witness pain without being consumed by it. You can set boundaries that protect your peace and still remain fully human, fully empathetic, fully present. Sovereignty isn't separation. It's a kind of rootedness, an understanding that being connected doesn't mean being entangled. You can exist in the same room as chaos and feel no compulsion to absorb it. You can walk among the noise and still carry a quiet center. The freedom of this state is subtle, almost invisible, but transformative. And in that freedom, you begin to see what was always hidden. Your value, your energy, your presence are not dependent on other people's reactions. They are not something to be negotiated or surrendered. You can exist fully, intensely, and clearly without losing a single piece of yourself. This is what detachment without disconnection feels like. You are present, fully human, fully connected, yet untouchable by the petty currents that once swept you away. And when you realize this, you begin to understand everything you've been feeling. The loneliness, the restlessness, the longing. It was never a void. It was a space your soul needed to claim its own clarity. You feel it first as a subtle shift, a quiet knowing that wasn't there before. Decisions you once agonized over now feel clear. Opportunities that used to confuse or overwhelm you now present themselves, and you recognize which ones align and which do not. You no longer chase answers outside yourself. The frantic searching, the constant questioning, the desperation for validation, it's fading, and in its place, something deeper begins to emerge. This is inner wisdom, not the kind that shouts, not the kind that demands attention, not the kind that fits neatly into timelines or expectations. It's quiet, it's steady, it speaks softly, yet it carries certainty. You notice how it guides you through subtle nudges, feelings of alignment, small instincts that no longer feel random. Every choice feels intentional, as if life itself is responding to the steadiness growing inside you. You reflect now, instead of reacting. Where once your emotions dictated your direction, now awareness does. When a challenge arises, you observe, you assess, you respond with clarity instead of urgency. You move in rhythm with what feels true, rather than what feels urgent or expected. The ego, which once demanded control, no longer leads. Its influence is quieted, replaced by presence. And this changes everything. Life doesn't feel like a series of obstacles to fight through anymore. It feels like a current that flows through you, shaping you as it moves, revealing lessons in real time. The chaos that once dictated your mood, your choices, your identity, now passes without consuming you. You feel guided from within. You feel rooted. You feel awake in a way that doesn't require external confirmation. There's a strength in this quietness, a power that doesn't need to boast. It's not about being right or achieving more. It's about moving in harmony with yourself. It's about knowing deeply that you are aligned with your own truth and that life is no longer happening to you, but through you. If you felt this quiet strength growing inside you lately, comment Sophia below, because this is the essence of the Sophia stage, the emergence of wisdom earned through struggle, reflection, and transformation. And when you live here, you finally realize that the answers you've been searching for were never outside. They were always inside you, waiting for you to finally listen.